Going back to Renee and Julie, Renee was my colleague for many years. She's came to Oberlin with professional museum expertise, which she has since developed, right? In 2018, she teamed up with Julie Min to put on in Oberlin the exhibit Courage and Compassion, our shared story of the Japanese American experience in World War II. It was a fabulous exhibit. Julie has a background as an exhibit designer in California. They've come together in 2024. You did our museum master plan among the very first things, and we are so lucky that they have taken us on as their project. So I'm going to turn it over to Julie and Renee and Katie. They're going to give you a sneak preview of the ways they're thinking about this house, and this is all about feedback, okay? So you've got people who are here, you've got beautiful cards, feedback cards on your seats. If you're listening to this from abroad, please, we want to hear what you've got to say about it. So we're looking forward to hearing how you're gonna think through with us.
Okay. Thank you, Carol. We are so thrilled to be here, and we're just absolutely feel incredibly privileged to be working on this project. It is such a wonderful project, and one that we are just having the best time thinking about and talking about all the time. So this is a small group. We absolutely encourage you to, we can just have a conversation, stop and ask us questions as we go. There'll be time for, conversation at the end as well, but we don't need to keep this as formal as, if you would like to just chime in with things or ideas or comments, please feel free to do so. So here's our plan for tonight. We're just going to be giving you an overview of where things stand. And we want to just start by the caveat. All of this is in process. All of this, everything we're presenting tonight are provisional ideas, right? Things are in flux as we are talking and in iteration with the designers and with everything else. So we are really eager for feedback because everything can be further developed and evolved. So we're going to start by talking just a little bit of the current status of the space and the renovations on the house. I'll talk a little bit about the interpretive framework that we're using for the inside of the house. We'll talk about the stories that will be in each of the spaces at this point. Katie's going to talk about the design elements that are being considered, the look and feel of the interior of the house. And then we'll end by just talking a little bit about community involvement. So, yeah.
So some of this may be familiar to you already, but for those who are unfamiliar, just a refresher, on the far left where you see Italian brick front house, so that's the part that faces Vine Street. Behind that is the original 1848 dwelling that Wilson Bruce Evans originally purchased. And then behind that is a new construction entry that will be, that's, as Carol said, in the process of being built. So just a quick trip down memory lane to see how far we've come. And when I say we, it's really Carol who has led this. But some before and afters, it's really remarkable and exciting to see, the space on the left turning into this bright, open, what will be this big, beautiful learning center. Okay, and so here again, looking at the plan, there's going to be an entry ramp, which I saw has started to be poured into a beautiful new entrance lobby. And when you come in the front doors, that green strip there represents a place for an iconic welcome experience that is going to set the tone, that this is not a traditional, historic house museum, but this is going to be something a little bit more lively and engaging. And from there, you walk through the Learning Center into the 1871, the brick house, up through the front parlor, and then back around. So it's a very linear path, which is nice for exhibit design because you can really control what the visitor experience is going to be. Okay, so.
The framework refers to the big interpretive themes, the big key themes that will be the overarching communication messages in the house, the things that we want to say will shape everything else that goes on into the house. And if you've read the master plan, there were 3. We've now evolved these into 4, so we're still thinking about them, but big themes, right? One, that Oberlin, and especially Oberlin's African-American community, has been incredibly important leaders in the struggle against slavery and the struggle for racial justice in this country. This is a new one, and we think this is really important, that Oberlin's history demonstrates the power and the strength of a committed community, and really emphasizing the way in which when communities come together and act together, they can do great things. We'll have, obviously, an overarching framework about the resilience and the grit and the determination of the Leary Evans family, and how they have remained committed to the struggle for racial justice across generations. And then the 4th goal is really about using the space to try to engage and activate people to become involved in the struggle themselves, so we can all choose to be part of the struggle for racial justice. And just we're going to walk through or give more details on each of these sections, but just to show you the overview of the exhibit sections in the space. There are 8 different exhibit sections. So you'll walk in from the entry into what will be the Learning Center, and there will be a welcome and an intro section. That will be followed by a section number 2, Oberlin's Choice, which will be looking at the decision of Wilson Bruce and Henry Evans to come to Oberlin. Oberlin as community will really be centered in trying to bring back a sense of and a feeling of life to the pre-Civil War Oberlin, particularly Black community, and the community overall. This hallway we're calling Master Craftsman, and we'll talk more about that hallway as we go forward. Oberlin as Crucible will be the room that is dedicated formally to the struggle against slavery and all of the political organizing that was going on in Oberlin in the abolitionist era. Oberlin as Launchpad will look how that struggle expands and continues, and the work continues in the period after the Civil War. A Living Part of Justice will bring us up to the present day with contemporary descendants of the Leary Evans family. And then there'll be a small section that is about the restoration process and the archaeological digs that have been happening in the house and the kinds of things that have been found there. And as we develop these 8, the goal of this whole process, as we see it, of our goal as content developers and I think as designers, is to take people on a journey. Right, we want to develop through these sections a storytelling arc. So you start in one place and you end in another place, and to really make help visitors not just encounter this history, not just learn this history, but feel the past, feel this history, and feel emotionally connected to key figures in this story, with the goal of course, really trying to inspire people to become agents of change themselves. So we've been talking a lot about how do we connect all these sections and how do we develop narrative arcs that carry us forward and bring emotional responses, not just intellectual ones, right? So we're going to go into, for each of these spaces, a little bit about more detail about the kinds of stories that we envision would be in these spaces. So your welcome and intro space. That's the space where we want people to be welcomed to the house. We want people to feel and understand that this was a family home, that a family lived in this home for generations, right? That there's just so much family history in this home. And we particularly want to introduce visitors not only to the main, Wilson Bruce and Henry Evans and Sarah Leary and all the main actors, but to Aunt Da, Dorothy Inboard Miller, who is the granddaughter of Wilson Bruce Evans, and who did the most work to preserve the house and to carry on and make sure that this is a history that people knew and communicate that to future generations. So all the younger Evans descendants talk about summers where they would come and Aunt Da would be here and she'd sit them down in that front parlor and tell them stories of the family. So we want Aunt Da to be the person who welcomes you into this home, right? And she did so much work to really keep it alive. And we'll introduce the Evans family, both in terms of their domestic life, but also in terms of their involvement in the world. And we want to just begin talking about the ways in which the Evans family and the larger community really made courageous choices to commit themselves to the fight against slavery. And this just gives you some of the artifacts, some of the objects and images that would be included. And we envision this space really is a family portrait gallery, right? Unfortunately, we don't have pictures of everyone from the period, right? But they do have a good number of pictures. So, we'll have Wilson Bruce Evans, we'll have a picture of the Evans children. We have this kind of sense where you walk in of the family group on the wall welcome you into their home and really trying to make people feel like a sense of belonging in this space. Go from that, moving forward into Oberlin as choice. And in this section, we really want to create a sense of a little bit of tension, a little bit of folks are making a choice to leave behind the world they know, to go into something different. And it's not a complete leap into the unknown for Wilson Bruce and Henry Evans, because their older sister already lives in Oberlin and can be sending them, notes about what Oberlin's like. But to get people thinking about that, what does that take? I mean, this is an experience a lot of Americans have had, to get up and leave and go somewhere else, but to really present what was the choices that people had? Why did they make the choices they did? What was going on that might have led them to choose to come to Oberlin? And so some of the stories we want to tell here are about the experience of free African Americans and the Evans family in North Carolina, which is where they were from, both Wilson Bruce and Henry Evans and the Leary family. So what were their lives like in North Carolina? And try to communicate a sense of the constraints as things in North Carolina, new laws were passed that constrained the lives of free blacks and took away rights. So after 1831 and the Nat Turner Rebellion, you begin to see North Carolina, which had been one of the more open states for free blacks, chipping away those rights, right? So we want to provide a sense of that sort of uncertainty of seeing what had been okay environments for some becoming less and less stable and more potentially dangerous. And then we want to talk about the unique nature of Oberlin. So there's the push out of North Carolina, and then there's the pull of Oberlin, right, as an anti-slavery community that was also committed to racial egalitarianism. And one of the things we want to do in this house is really bring to life and communicate how radical Oberlin was, right? Oberlin was, arguably the most radical community in the United States in the 1840s, right, in terms of thinking about a place committed not only to abolition, where nearly the entire community is committed to that as a religious ethic, a moral ethic, but also to the idea of racial equality. That is just so, understanding that in the larger national landscape, we really want to get a sense of this place was really, really different. Right, and then talk about the Evans family decision to move to Oberlin and the challenges of migrating and some of the kinds of artifacts that can be here, right? So Henry Evans was a pretty successful cabinet maker in North Carolina. So when he made the decision to move, and Wilson Bruce worked for him, right, he had to sell his business. So this is him advertising, saying, I'm going to sell my business and I'm moving up north. I'm moving away. So that's another sort of layer of decision making, right? There are free blacks in North Carolina had to get papers to authorize them, essentially white patrons, to authorize them to leave the state. So we have the text of the papers that the Evans carried. We don't have the original documents, but we'll find a way to use those documents, right, to show the kinds of burdens that people faced. And once they left, they were not allowed to come back. North Carolina law said free blacks can't migrate back to North Carolina. So when you were leaving for good. The table there is a table that Henry Evans carved that comes out of his cabinet studio. We don't have that actual table, but we can get images of it. So we'll be thinking creatively about how to bring in artifacts and images when we don't have the specific, the object itself.
So then, from there, this section takes place in the dining room of the brick house, and visitors will literally, you cross a threshold from this big open space where you're thinking about, they are thinking about the decision to leave. And then once they've made that decision, you as a visitor cross over into this new space. And here's a picture of what it looks like now. This is the dining room. It's not a huge space, and there are many, many, many stories that we would like to tell. But it's so beautiful because it's almost like you're being enveloped into that rich woodwork detail. It should feel very welcoming, very warm, very sort of domestic now, and you're really learning about the Evans family as individuals. So some of the stories that we want to cover in this section are the unique nature, as Renee said, of interracial life in Oberlin, which really was remarkable. The diversity and size of Oberlin's African-American community. So here in Oberlin, you had free blacks, like the Evans family, you had African-American students, you had self-emancipated people who had come and stayed, you had freedom seekers that are transiting through on their way to Canada. So it was a very diverse African-American community, and also it was quite large by between 1850 and 1860 in terms of a percentage of the population. It went from like 11 or 12 to basically 20% by 1860. So it was quite sizable. And so the Evanses and others were able to participate in the economic life of Oberlin. The Evanses had a cabinetry shop and also coffin making and undertaking, but they joined others that were doing blacksmithing and harness making and grocers and milliners. And so there was a rich community there. They were also able to participate in the civic community. They attended church together. They attended integrated schools, which was very rare. And they were also, the Evans brothers and other Black Oberlinians were involved in local politics. Henry Evans was later is voted to become the sexton. By the 1870s, this is getting a little ahead, there are, I think, 5 elected members, in the local government that are African American. So really we want to, highlight the remarkable nature of the African American community in Oberlin, but also we wanted to feel like the families. We really want the human, individual, personal stories, which is a lot. I know it's very ambitious for this space, but this is what we're going to try to convey. And that can be done, yes, through maps where you can learn about people's homes. On the left, that is John Scott, and on the upper right is his home, which was across the street from the Evanses. So you get a neighborhood feel, you start to think about community connections, a gravy boat and a table, just domestic items that are in the collection now that can help convey that. And that's actually the deed to the house, the original, in that floor plan I showed you, that middle portion, which was purchased for $500, which is quite a princely sum. From there, Section 4, a master craftsman, is the only part of this Evans house that is going to be historically reproduced, restored to its true, the colors, the historic colors, the finishes, the materials. So here's what it looks like now. And you can already see the wood, okay, I'll show you in a second. Here, you can see examples of his woodwork, which are they're distinct, they're beautiful, and it's really great to have one space where we can really celebrate that. But this shouldn't just be an aesthetic experience. Once you've met the family and the neighbors and the whole community, as you walk down this, pretty narrow hallway into the next section, you should feel almost like a palpable sense of the families that live there. So the fact that you as a visitor can touch the banister and think about other families and children that have come down these stairs over the past 150 years, it's very moving. I mean, hopefully for me it's very moving, and I hope for visitors it will be as well. So the other aspect of it is, again, going from that modest original dwelling to this house, which even by today's standards is a really handsome, beautiful home. What that can tell you about the status of the Evans house in Oberlin. So from there,
Excuse me, over that section, I've been in the house many times. On the walls going down this basement, they have old newspapers on either side of it. Were those preserved or?
well, the basement,
Yeah.
so far not part of our purview, but
Yeah.
Okay.
yeah, but that's good to know.
We need to go through the questions.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes.
The question was about newspapers that line the stairwell going down to the basement, which, oh, I thought I had a picture of it.
Yeah, I think
Well, yeah, there, okay, where the cinder block is, if you, if you move the cinder block and go down that, in that area, there are newspapers lining, and we're not sure the status of what the basement is going to become at this point. Our current plan is for it not to be a publicly accessible space.
Right.
Okay,
It seemed to recall they were the early part of the 20th century, they had $15 suits, and it seems really business and stuff every day.
yeah.
Right.
I mean,
A
they're,
time capsule.
exactly, yeah, there are a lot of things, especially when we get to the restoration part, where this idea of how do we know what we know, there's so much evidence that is coming out of this house in terms of physical artifacts. Carl?
I was curious, I noticed that the Amherst folks are putting together traditional woodworking things they would use. And I was wondering, I don't know whether there's anything existing in the house now, but it might be something that would be interesting to look at. It's what kinds of tools they
Yes.
have available to them. And maybe we could figure out a way of finding something.
So the question was about Amherst, which is our neighboring community, presenting historic woodworking tools and whether the Evans House has any of that. I mean, I think we have evidence of some portions of things, but not too much. We have nails for those of you here in person. No.
We have some random pieces of tools,
Yeah.
but that's an asset.
Yeah, random pieces of tools. And there has been talk about in programming, maybe being able to teach woodworking skills, historic, so not power tools, but handmade things. Again, Jerome Bias, who does that kind of historic woodworking, has come and is a friend of the Evans House. And so, that would be a wonderful opportunity.
Yeah, and there might be space for some tools, some of the woodworking cabinetry things to be in the community room, talking about the cabinet making business, right, and illustrating that story. So.
Okay.
Okay. So,
Sorry, you're gonna.
yeah, we'll move forward. Okay. Going to Oberlin's Crucible. So you've just been in these two spaces that are really warm. They're domestic. They're about the family and the community. They've been welcoming and feeling of sort of a tight-knit community. And hopefully by now you've gotten to know some of the key figures in this story. So when you go to Oberlin's Crucible, which is the room about all the enormous energy and the enormous fight that Oberlin put into the fight against slavery, and the way Wilson Bruce and Evans and many of his family members were involved in that fight, we want you to feel the stakes, right? We want visitors to not just think about this as this historic episode, but to really feel the stakes when you find out that Wilson Bruce's Evans' brother-in-law and nephew die at Harper's Ferry, right? That is an emotional event for you, not just a cognitive one, right? To really feel this. So this is the space that this will be in. It's probably one of the largest rooms. It's the front parlor, and it also has these beautiful windows that are facing what is now Martin Luther King Jr. Park, and which has the monuments to Harper's Ferry and to the Oberlin-Wellington Rescue. And so we absolutely are talking about how to activate those windows as part of the interpretive space to extend the storytelling here. So there's many, many stories to fit into this space, and for each of these, they could be probably their own museum. So they'll be really we'll be really working on refining this so it remains clear and impactful, but you're still getting a sense of the energy, the activism, the sacrifice, and we want this space to feel busy. We want it to feel urgent. It's going to be the most crowded of the spaces in the house, I think, given the density of stories about Oberlin's political fight against slavery. So this is where we'll encounter the Underground Railroad and how, we'll have encountered it a little bit earlier, but really go into the Underground Railroad in Oberlin and how active Oberlin was on the Underground Railroad and how what it looked like in this community when people were living openly and weren't hiding in tunnels because they could be sheltered by the entire community. Talk about the impact of the Fugitive Slave Act of 1850, which really made it more challenging for self-emancipated people who lived in Oberlin and raised their fears, and the way the community responded by doubling down on a sense of community protection, right, that we will protect the people in our midst. This is where we talk about the Oberlin Wellington Rescue, and particularly, though not exclusively, the involvement of the Evans brothers and other Oberlinians in that very famous episode where Oberlinians and folks from Wellington went and freed John Price after he'd been captured by slave catchers. John Brown's raid and the role of Oberlinians, and particularly Lewis Sheridan Leary and John Copeland, who were the brother-in-law and nephew of Wilson Bruce Evans, who both died at Harper's Ferry or were died as a result of Harper's Ferry, and then also Civil War service. So, and Wilson Bruce Evans is not certainly not the only Black Oberlinian who goes to fight in the Civil War. So we want to talk about folks' service in the Civil War. And some of the artifacts that could be in this room, right? We have these incredible images of, that's Lewis Sheridan Leary, and I just love that picture of him. It just, it feels alive, right, to me, looking at that young man. Like, you can still feel his energy and vitality through this photo. John Copeland, who is captured at Harper's Ferry. So Lewis Sheridan Leary dies in the fighting. John Anthony Copeland captured at Harper's Ferry and then is executed later. And in between, while he's jailed, he writes these beautiful, beautiful series of letters to his family, to his brother, to others, to explain his actions and to really lay out why he sacrificed his life for the cause of abolitionism. And so we have some of those letters. The archives here has those letters, so we envision using those. Some other things, right? The iconography of the abolitionist movement. This is a small coin that is, am I not a woman and your sister? The abolitionist movement also had a lot of, am I not a man and your brother? But the kind of visual imagery that was used to try to get people involved in the fight against slavery. And then artifacts related to the Oberlin Wellington Rescue. So the famous photo of the rescuers who were, and then Oberlin, the community celebrated the rescuers when they were released from jail and when they came back home. And so some of the broadsides in newspapers celebrating the Oberlin Wellington rescuers. From this room, which has been very active, and you've been connected to the people and you felt their sacrifice and the weight of the choices they made, right? The weight of the choice to go join John Brown, the weight of the choice to spend a long time in jail as a form of civil disobedience, right? From there, you go into the post-Civil War era, and this is Oberlin as launchpad. And here it's a much quieter space. It's a much more reflective space. This is a space that is both a little bit about the opportunities that open up in the period after the Civil War, but also about the loss that happens in the period after Reconstruction, when we see both the nation and Oberlin beginning to retreat from any commitment to equal rights and racial equality. And this is also a period in which Wilson Bruce Evans and his wife, Sarah Jane, they had 8 children, and 5 of them, not all of them die in the 1870s, but 3 of them die in this period, and only 3 of the 8 live to adulthood. So they're suffering all these personal losses at the same time as they're navigating the new world after the Civil War. So this is the back parlor. This is the space. It's a smaller room than where the politics room is. In this room, we'll talk very briefly about the promise of Reconstruction and then what happens with Reconstruction, and bring out at least, certainly we've not mentioned John Mercer Langston, but he will be a figure in this story too, and his role in Reconstruction. And then really thinking about how the Evans family remained committed to the struggle for racial equality, in the midst of their personal losses, in the midst of disappointment in the town, right? How did they remain committed? And one way they remained committed, and this room really emphasizes education, particularly as a pathway to advancement and as a way to continue the fight for racial justice. And then we focus on the next generation, the children of Wilson Bruce and Sarah, the children of Henrietta and Henry, who are going on to carry this struggle to North Carolina, to Kansas, to Washington, D.C. And some of the things we really want to emphasize in this room is how important education was to this family, right? These are families whose kids, many of them went to Oberlin College. They got multiple degrees. There are so many diplomas in the collection. And so one of the things we want to do in this space is emphasize the way in which These are folks who embraced education and then felt a duty to spread what they learned as they went out in the world. So there'll be diplomas. There'll be this wonderful little slate, which is right over here. You can see this belonged to Mary Evans, who was maybe 7 at the 1870, and she died, was one of the children who died during this period. But it's a little slate where you can practice your cursive letters. So you can learn to write cursive, which I wish kids were still doing today. But really a testament, right, to this, the ways in which this family valued education. This will be a space with books, right? There were many books in the house. Thomas Inborden, who marries Sarah Evans, the daughter, right? And they go off and start a school in North Carolina, but there's many of his books. And one of the things we envision in this quieter space is maybe using the settee that you have in the house, Carol, and with a bookcase, and creating a reading nook, because these are books that visitors could pick up and look at and peruse. And so having a corner where you could sit and reflect and look at the books and that they had in their space. You leave this room, which is about, so we've gone from the story of Wilson Bruce and Henry and his sister Delilah, and then getting broader to the community, and then to the next generation. And then you come to this section, A Living Part of Justice. And this is where we take this up to the present, and we trace the stories of succeeding generations of Leary Evanses as they go out in the world. And here we also want to emphasize the ways in which the struggle for racial justice can take many forms. If in the last room we see education as being a key way in which people sought to advance the cause of racial equality, what we see as we go further into the story of subsequent generations is the many different mechanisms, the many different ways that people can be committed to making change for the better, for being part of a struggle for racial justice, that it doesn't have to just be through education, and including that historic preservation, preserving this house, being able to tell the story is part of that struggle, and really emphasizing that no matter your location, no matter what you do in your life, you can be part of this struggle as well. And so we want to introduce people to some of the amazing, amazing descendants in this family. So Lillian Evans, who is a granddaughter of Henrietta and Henry, or great-great-granddaughter? Granddaughter, I believe granddaughter, who becomes the first Black opera singer to sing on European stages, right? The picture on the far right is her son Thurlow Tibbs, who becomes a very influential Black art collector, collector of African American art, and has a gallery and amasses the collection that becomes the basis of the collection for the National Portrait Gallery of their African American art. In the middle there is Lewis Hughes, who is a chef, but who has started community kitchens and does a lot of food justice work. There's a school named after Thomas Inborden, so one of the descendants of Wilson, a different Wilson Bruce Evans, right? The Wilson Bruce Evans that comes from the Henrietta and Henry line. Family pictures. We want to tell the story of Melody Hughes, who does public health, right? And all of these folks talk about the ways in which they are inculcated, right, as a family, in a sense of tradition and duty, in a sense of responsibility. You have this legacy, and here we also want to talk about the naming practices, which we think is one way this family has really kept alive this sense of duty and responsibility. The fact that there's so many people named Wilson Bruce is a sign, or Louis Sheridan, or these names that keep getting passed down across generations. And to us, this quote that comes from Wilson Inborden Hughes, or another Wilson, really sums up what we hope this space communicates. I hope visitors feel like the site tells them the story about how the Evans family, Oberlin, and in fact they themselves, so there are a continuation of the story that Oberlin fostered. I hope they achieve a sense of vigilance about being a living part of justice that Oberlin exudes wherever they come from or are going. So that's where we want people to be at this point in their journey, to feel like that they too can be and are part of a living part of justice. And the final little section of the house will be dedicated to the story of the restoration and the archaeological discovery, and really thinking about what can we learn when we look at the structure itself, what can we learn when we look at what was found in the archaeological research, and also thinking about the process of turning this into a public site, which was both an Evans family project and a community project. And we want to celebrate the work that has gone into preserving this house and turning it into a site, a community historic site for the public. So just a few of the things that might be in this section, and some of them are over on this table, and you're welcome to come and peruse after the presentation. Some of the many inkwells that were found, another sign of like the importance of education, I think. Many inkwells, just the process, and the bottom picture there is things that have been discovered very recently in the archaeological dig, including a child sled. So some of these will be featured in that section. Okay, so I'm going to turn this over to you. Okay.
Hi, everyone. We have the exciting job at Agnes Studio, partnering with Renee and Julie, to visually interpret this incredible story. So we're really in the beginning stages of, the actual graphic design of it all. But one of the things we started to sort of begin to think about and look at were colors. What is the palette of this home? And Carol, you underwent a study for the home, and kind of to see what the history of the paint was. So we kind of start with these creams and yellows, and then they sort of gradually become blues and blue-greens. So what is the color story here? How is that going to kind of play a role? How does the color highlight the incredible woodwork throughout the house? These are some of the things that we get to think about as we're working on the visual portion of this. The other thing that we get really excited about is typography. And you saw in some of the earlier slides, there's some incredible examples of historic typography, from the newspapers to the letters. So how does typography tell the story? How do we make it representative of this family and the time? So here, just a couple of typographic studies, which may not be that interesting to some folks, but are to us. And they kind of range from more expressive to, more the less expressive. Oops. Here's a little image. As you can see, here's a drawing of the floor plan. We had a work meeting recently with Julie and Renee, my business partner, Danielle, and myself. And really, it's kind of an incredible experience to be working on this project from the beginning and responding to all of the work that's being done and thinking about, okay, what are the feelings of each of these rooms? How do you want someone to walk through the space, and what do you want them to feel as they encounter different things? How do you put information in different areas to kind of help guide someone through and hopefully make them feel something as you're telling the story? And you can see here, possibly it's kind of small, but even kind of taking the work that Julie and Renee have done and kind of thinking about opportunities to not only display the artifacts, but what other kind of visuals can tell this story. Do we need some audio in certain spaces? Would it be appropriate to have a bench in these areas that we want folks to reflect? So we're thinking about these sort of moments that people encounter as they go through, and how the visuals of the space will affect their experience. And it's important to us to not only pay homage to the time and make sure that we're representing the time, but also to make this feel like a contemporary experience, so folks of all ages can enjoy, and that it feels like something in the now and it's in the present. And also, we've talked a lot about kind of like the physical, tactile elements that we can incorporate in this. So how do people not only view and read what's in this museum, but how do they interact with it? How do they touch it? How do they feel it? How does it become something that is more alive than text on a panel? So here's just sort of some inspiration images that we have been looking at a little more. Renee talked earlier about kind of how to treat these windows. You can use window treatments to make an incredible statement. Is it an image of Oberlin, how it looked in the past on the window screen, and then when you raise it up, it's present? There are all sorts of opportunities, I think, to tell this story in unique visual ways.
Yeah, and then finally, and this is just briefly, want to just talk a little bit about bringing community voices. So one of the things that we absolutely want to ensure is there's space for in the house is a space for community voices and community stories and things that can rotate, can remain fresh, can bring us up to both contemporary moment and really connect past and present. So for example, we've been thinking about, could there be, we definitely want spaces for people in Oberlin and visitors who come to the house to be able to share their responses, to share their connection to this history, to share what issues they think are compelling today that they would like to see and be part of addressing. And then we're also thinking about how you can connect this history to the present by maybe offering examples of other examples of communities in action or committed communities. So we're, could start with Minneapolis, where we, as we've been talking about this history, thinking about like, wow, how relevant and parallel the story of Oberlin in the 1850s feels to like what folks in Minneapolis were doing and standing up to the ICE crackdown, right? And so ways to make the point to people and to make a case without it being too in your face, right? But to really suggest this, we can learn from this history. This history is not just in the past. The story's not just in the past. And Oberlin is really a model and an example of how communities and individuals can come together to really make the world different and to have an impact and be impactful in the world, right? So we have left everyone on their chairs a card that you could fill out if you like. If you're on Zoom, these are the questions on the card. We're really interested to hear your feedback on anything about the presentation, everything we've said today, but the questions we've posed here, just what are you most excited or interested about at the Evans House? And that could be things that there's things that you're interested about that we've not talked about at all. And you're like, hey, where is this? Like, we want to hear that. We want to know, like, there should be things. What are the ways that the content relates to your life at Oberlin today, and any other thoughts and comments? And then we've left our email address there, so if you want to send us an email if you're online, you can do so. Yeah, and that we just want to open the floor for conversation.
Will the second floor be used?
The second floor, the plan is now, it will not be used for exhibits. And I think the sense is the staircase is probably not easily navigable, but it will be used for office space for staff. And there likely will be one of the rooms that will be a kind of records room, an archives room, a space where you could go and whatever collection that the Wilson Bruce Evans has in terms of historic records would be there, and there'd be a table and you could use it. So it'll be used in that way, but that would be by appointment or not just
Special.
yeah, not just open to regular visitors who are walking past.
Just wondering if you're gonna have any reference to the Langston family.
Yeah, absolutely, right, yes.
Well, so it would be impossible as you're doing family not to reference the language. Make sure you're running.
Oh, sorry, thank you.
Sorry.
Yeah,
So-
sorry,
so-
thank you.
It would be impossible as you're doing subsequent generations, right, not to reference the Langston family because Lewis Sheridan Leary's widow marries Charles Langston and goes to Kansas. But I imagine, Langston will also come up in one of the earlier rooms as,
Yes.
again, what is the Oberlin community like? It has this very important first lawyer of color, perhaps in the United States, but certainly in Ohio.
Right.
So, so I'm sure he'll be there.
We've been compiling a list of Oberlin families to include and trying to make sure, yes, obviously John Mercer Langston, the Langston family, the prominent families as well, but also we want to represent a diversity of the African-American community. So those who were formerly enslaved, those who were business owners, women, men, I mean, there's so many families.
Right.
Yeah, we have a long list. Those that participated in the Oberlin Wellington Rescue, the Wall family, of course, and then,
Yeah.
there's a lot. Sabram Cox.
All right,
Sorry.
so we've been, so one of the things we talk about a lot, and now we talk about with Katie and Danielle, is how do we, how can we present this in a way that's not overwhelming to visitors and that you can keep this all straight? So we've been playing with ideas like, that community room is going to have the family table, right? Could there be things on the table that are telling the stories of different families you could pick up and read, or something about 6 different prominent or, diversity of families in Oberlin, something like that. But yeah, the Langstons will absolutely.
And it
be
adds
in
to
the
this
space.
feeling of the close-knit community, because they are very intertwined. There are so many relationships between the different families as well.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
so definitely Langston.
Yes, though I feel like he deserves his own museum too. Right? So, I know that is.
That's the next.
It is, I know, because boy, he has an interesting life. Yeah.
This kind of reminded me of Alexander book about groups where they start with Kunta Kinte, and the way you're taking it all the way to the 20th century, and how that family just completely became. I was amazed at the type of occupations that were in the descendants.
Yeah.
It's absolutely incredible.
It's really cool. I mean, the first, she's like the first head of veterinary, like veterinarian woman, female. What's her title? But yeah, she's she's basically one of the first folks to run a veterinary department in a big university, right? Like they've gone in all of these directions, but when you talk to folks and when you read their statements, all of them remain committed to this idea that this is not just about me. My success doesn't just reflect on me. Like this larger sense of community responsibility, and it's really a beautiful kind of family legacy to have, right? To be able to pass that on to generations. Yeah, Phyllis.
Has it been any thought to the use of the porch at home?
So Carol, do you want to take the use of the porch?
Okay, so the question is, has there been any thought to the use of the porch? And I think the porch will be handled as a kind of opportunity for symbolic performance, right? Because it is this really important porch. It's part of what Julie was saying about the house itself being this kind of statement about Wilson's place in the community. And I think it's a great place to make that clear to visitors. So I think while it won't, I mean, we haven't decided, but I don't think it'll be part of the regular visiting stream. I think that there will be opportunities to use it as a space to, if you will, perform gentility, perform that kind of standing in the community. What do you think? Do you have ideas? Phyllis?
I mean, I think it's a wonderful place. I like to see things go on. I like to see
Put some chairs out there.
porch,
Yeah.
I mean, maybe some reenactments.
That'd be fun. So a little, yeah?
Yeah, could absolutely.
It is such a wonderful porch. I agree. I don't know. We'll come up with some ways to use it. Performance space I like. So.
And also the original, I know this is a newly built porch, but the original porch was built by Cornelius, right? He added that on. So it is a family endeavor, that part of the story when we're telling the story of the building of that.
Cornelius is the son.
Sorry.
Are not as quite as steeped in
Neil.
the family tree
So,
as we are right now.
I think Gary's got some questions that have come in from the folks on who are watching us remotely.
All right, so there have been 2 questions that have come in online. One is, after saying that he's very excited about the vision, Wilson in Borden Hughes
Okay, yes.
says, is there a plan for a store or merchandising component? Sorry, I'm the capitalist in the family.
There is, yes. In fact, it's on that slide, right?
Yeah.
Store might be an overstatement, Wilson, but Nook, like commercial Nook, it might be better. So you see, it's very small here.
Does the cursor work?
Yeah.
Here.
Okay, he's sending a heart.
Yes.
And
To
then
sell WBA house merch and books and things, yeah.
Bill Chapman, hats. Bill Chapman writes, bravo, have you given thought to where the John Brown engraving inscribed by Henrietta Leary Evans will be used? It seems it would be powerful, hung between the windows in the front parlor that look out to the obelisk.
Okay, thank you. That's a great idea. We have thought, there's been some different discussion of where that portrait could go. And this is, for those who don't know, it's this amazing engraving of John Brown that Henrietta Evans then wrote a message, and she sent it to a friend of hers, right, John's, right?
And this is Bill found.
Yeah, so Bill, right, and Bill found it and then gifted it to the house. And I mean, to me, this is an incredibly powerful object, in both because we have Henrietta Evans's writing on there and her words, but also because in most of the country, John Brown was seen at this point as insane, as dangerous, as, really, for the family to be celebrating the fact that they were connected to John Brown, for Oberlin to be open to that, for this family to be open to it, that's like a really important signal of their commitment to racial justice and to the fight against slavery. So I am advocating it to be somewhere in that room, Bill, the politics room, because I think it will be most impactful once you've told the story of John Brown's raid. So between those windows could be a great space. But, yeah.
It's definitely one of the cherished parts of it.
Yes.
I'm just wondering, there's one worry that I have, which is that when they built the front end, they rested the brickwork on the back part. And have you been able to figure out the engineering on that?
So the question was about when they built, so the story of the house, which is, we're constantly rewriting as we learn more from its deconstruction. So the story of the house is that the rear wing is the original house, and that was actually built in 1848, before Wilson Bruce Evans arrived in Oberlin in 1854, and was probably on the property already. To that, in the 1870s, they attached the two-story Italian with the beautiful porch that you see from the street. And when you look at it, it's pretty, it's fine. They did not put brick on the inside. They braced it up, but we are doing so much work in reconstructing and bracing absolutely everything in that rear wing that nothing will be weight-bearing from the original. It is really being encapsulated. It's going to be absolutely beautiful, because you will see are you going to show the beams
Just-
here? Yeah.
Yeah, because what's nice also is those log beams are being preserved and
We are preserving
highlighted.
Yeah,
in such
yeah.
Sorry, I hope I'm
keep
not making
going.
anyone nauseous here. Avert your gaze.
Okay, so if you can get a sense of these incredible beams here, everything will be encapsulated. And if you look, actually, if you can look at,
I'm gonna walk
sorry.
around.
This wall is what we have exposed between, you can come up and, really, go ahead. That's where they were attached, and Carl, please come up and take a look at it. So it's pretty secure. What isn't secure is that the beams, after 170-something years, many of them were rotted, the foundation was, actually, there was no foundation in the southeast corner of the house, as we discovered. So everything, I mean, this is why I'm so excited that they're pouring foundation this week. Again, it's a remarkable building that has lasted this long, and the construction company, a shout out to Ozanne Construction, they are making sure that this building will stand for at least another 200 years. So everybody's in this together, yeah.
All right, well, I'm ready for it.
They're on it, they're on it.
I did bring a couple of the artifacts. I brought some of Thomas Sewell Imborden's books, including his biography of Booker T. Washington, which somebody might like to look at, and a couple of other books on English royalty. So it's kind of, he had a very capacious set of interests, but a couple of other things. One of the inkwells, there's going to be a huge collection of bottles, right, coming out of the, Stephen's here. Steve, do you want to say anything about the bottles while we're here? Come on up, come on up. It's great to see you. So Stephen has been working with the archaeologists at ASC Group, doing a cataloging, you can explain.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hello, everyone. I'm Stephen Wallace. I'm a third-year archaeological studies major at Oberlin College, and I've had the pleasure of working with David Kling, who's the lead archaeologist in the ASC group, who's been doing excavations at the Wilson Bruce Evans House site. And over the semester, I've been working to clean and catalog a collection of glass bottles, among like other metal artifacts and ceramics that have all been dug up from the site. And yeah, there's a really good extensive collection of very like intact bottles and like a variety of usage of those bottles. And so yeah, they tell a really cool story about like consumerism, because around this time in the late 1800s, early 1900s, consumerism patterns were being more like widespread, and it's just really neat to look at how these consumer patterns like impact what stuff they were putting in this fill lot behind the house. Yeah. So some of these, yeah.
We can't wait to have Stephen back to give a full program. Thank you so much.
Comments or questions or suggestions?
If you think of anything, email us or give Carol a call.
Yeah, check those out.
Well, thank you, Julie, Renee, and Katie. We hope this And for those of you here and also listening elsewhere, Gary and I will be doing a more general update on where we are on the project at Kendall at Oberlin on, I think it's Wednesday, but it's May 19th. And that's free and open to the public. We'll be sending out an announcement on that. But thank you for coming tonight. Please, 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 Julie and Renee and Katie are here for a while. Handle the artifacts. You don't usually get to hear that. And ask us lots of questions.
If I could say one thing, I want to give you, Gary, phenomenal credit for getting this whole thing started. Sticking with it.
Well, it takes a village. I would say that there are people in the room who inspired me. So it was not just us. It's really been an amazing community project. And thank you for saying that. All right. Well, we'll say goodnight to everybody. Bye.